School for Boys here in Enugu. My name, as always, is Sandra Ziwo, and I'm particularly excited for this topic. It says family matters, when to negotiate and when to fight. Okay, so to take us on this journey is Uche Attoh, who is a lawyer by training. He has had an extensive career in the field of human resources, negotiation, and arbitration. Currently, he's the head of Department of Organizational Behavior and Human Resource in Lagos Business School. I'm excited to have you on board, sir. Thank you for being here at Parents First.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, Sandra. Do I have the floor?
Yes.
Yes, you do. Like you do. Take it away.
All right. All right. Thank you very much. All right. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Please, can you all confirm that you're hearing me?
Yes, we can hear you. Loud and clear.
Great, great. Thank you so much. Let me begin by expressing my gratitude to the organizers of this program for the honor and for the opportunity to be with you this evening. It is an honor that I am not taking for granted, and I must thank my good friend, Oga Sebi, whom I have known for probably getting to 30 years now, and I'm glad that I'm meeting him here, even though we had agreed that one day I will come to Enugu. I think that one must still be in the pipeline. I must also thank my colleague Meg for, again, putting pressure on me to ensure that not only that I come today, but that I continue to prepare for this program. So Sandra, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Today we are dealing with a matter that is of concern, not just to all of us sitting here, but to the entire world, as we find that we are at a crossroads when you begin to look at family issues from various perspectives. One, the meaning of family is no longer as clear as it used to be. One of my colleagues in HR recently ran into a very serious problem. The problem being that an expatriate was employed in this multinational firm in Nigeria, and on a particular day, the expatriate came to this HR director, who happens to be a Nigerian. Please, I need permission to go and bring my family. Oh, the HR director was excited. He said, please, go and bring your family and fill the necessary forms. When you return, we will reimburse. It is part and parcel of your conditions of service. And the expatriate said, thank you so much, man, and left. Within 1 week, the expatriate arrived. And the PA to the HR director rushed into her office and said, look, Mr. Pansil has come with the family. The HR director, in excitement to meet family, rushed out and didn't wait to hear the full story from the PA. She rushed out, only to find Mr. Pansil holding another man. In fact, the shock almost paralyzed her because she never reckoned with that definition of family. The matter spiraled to a very dangerous extent, and it all boiled down to the fact that when he said family, probably you should have made further inquiries. Because today, the boundaries of these concepts are no longer what they used to be. Again, we shall talk about all those. So, ladies and gentlemen, you are all welcome. The roadmap for us this evening will be that we'll spend some time looking at meaning. We shall look at the topic for today, and which we call family matters. Yeah, but if we are going to talk about wedding ceremony, burial ceremony, they will not be too much. So we're going to pay more attention to those conflicts. Those are perhaps the area that attacks us as family members. We shall look briefly at what we call some moments in history where mothers like us face difficult situations, and we shall see how they took those decisions as to whether to fight or whether to do something else. At the end, we shall be looking at decision making in this regard. How do I decide whether this is the time to fight to a finish? I will not give an inch on this matter. This is a matter of principle. You hear such things. Principle versus what we call pragmatism. Mandela faced this situation. American president faced it at one point. Sometimes you hear of the devil's alternative. Whichever way you turn, something bad is likely to happen. So we shall look at decision making in this regard. Is there a better alternative? Again, here we shall rely on experience. What experience has taught us in this area? The alternative in dealing with this conflicting and conflictual situations. And like everything in life, we hope to come to an end. So once again, you are most welcome. Where did the concept of family come from? I was informed that it originally came from the Latin word called famulus. And historically, it implied man, lady, youngsters, and surprisingly, their workers. In fact, sometimes to say their slaves. And therefore, in the olden days, it was clear to humans that the family had a boundary. Man, lady, today we call it spouse, youngsters, meaning their children, and then finally, whoever they have within their vicinity by way of their workers, or sometimes some will call them slaves or serfs. Now, in terms of the meaning of family, today, given developments that we all know, we now say that the definition of family is fraught with definitional instability. Never clear, wide range of possible family forms, legal status in terms of various jurisdictions confirm different kinds of legal status to different forms. We have the one we are used to, heterosexual. We have today what we call registered partnerships, unmarried cohabitation, same-sex couples. The bottom line, ladies and gentlemen, is that the boundaries of family are no longer clear. And therefore, so that you don't suffer the fate which my colleague in a multinational suffered, whenever you are in a situation where you need to use the term family, it has to be defined that by family we mean for purposes of clarity. However, today, from the purpose of research and for the purpose of our discussions this evening, we can look at family from three perspectives: the role perspective, the social legal perspective, and the biogenetic perspective. At the end of the day, we shall see the preferred perspective. The reason being that it is the most inclusive, because we said that these three perspectives are not mutually exclusive. One of them, the first one, actually includes the second and the third. And therefore, we are going to pay more attention in our discussion to the role perspective of family. Bring this option. First, the role perspective. In essence, it means relationships are called family to the extent that the relating or the relational partners or parties feel and act like family. Characteristics of the role perspective include there must be patterns of interdependence between these parties that are involved. They provide support and emotional support, emotional attachment to each other. More than anything, you experience some form of love and intimacy. And therefore, where all these variables are present from the perspective of the role protagonist, a family exists. The socio-legal perspective of family takes a narrower view. So then, family and family relationship are those that carry legal recognition. So until the law confers that status, you cannot talk about family. To them, they will exclude any other relationship, irrespective of how it presents, until and unless it is recognized by law. And by law here, we're talking either common law or statutes, the Marriage Act, the Matrimonial Causes Act of 1970, like in the case of Nigeria. We have native law and custom. So then, whatever falls within these series of laws will be the only thing that we describe as family. There is a genetic perspective of family. For this school of thought, family is connected to those relationships that have reproductive and genetic components. Again, this is even narrower than the legal, because the main characteristics here are that procreative or reproductive relationship, inability to reproduce will not matter here, but provided there is a potential, meaning that it assumes that it has to be heterosexual, and this definition completely disqualifies same-sex marriage or same-sex couples. So these people, it is clear that until a relationship has the potential to procreate, it does not fall within what we should call family. Now, today we see that in both research and in application, there is an all-inclusive perspective, which is very close to what today we refer to as the role perspective. And this definition is to the fact that a family is a please note this word, self-defined group of intimates who create and maintain themselves through their own interactions and their interactions with others. A family may include both voluntary and involuntary relationships. And therefore, extended family, people you do not even know about, they are all included within this definition. It creates both literal and symbolic internal and external boundaries. Remember, it's a self-defined group, so they create their own boundaries where they draw the line. This is our family tree. This is where it ends. It evolves over time, and more importantly, it has history, a present, and a future. For the purpose of this discussion, we are going to rely more on this definition. The reason being that it includes elements of the three perspectives earlier mentioned, but it is more in line with the role perspective of family. The main characteristics of the family as we defined: voluntary and involuntary relationship. They support each other through all kinds of methods, including emotional, especially at times where such needs arise. There's love and intimacy to a large extent. However, because of the relationships, you are bound to find conflictual and conflicting interactions arising from the very fact of this relationship. So as we move towards our topic for this evening, let us look at why should we be talking about conflicting or conflictual relationships, especially in a family as we define it. But let's begin globally. What is conflict? Yeah, because if it is to talk about the good times when the family has to do wedding and so on, it wouldn't be a problem. The reason being, it is a time of merriment. However, it is in a period of conflict that you test the patience of family members, and that is where we will have to be very intentional in the way and manner we act within this period. So globally, conflict is defined as any situation in which, please note this word, in which seemingly it appears, in law we say prima facie, it appears that incompatible goals, attitudes, emotion, or behavior lead to disagreement or opposition between two or more parties. And therefore, the main issue here is seemingly, it looks like from what we are seeing prima facie, it appears that the goals are not compatible. I recall one occasion when two high-ranking officers of government were retired, and the reason the government gave due to irreconcilable differences. Yeah, but this is different because it says seemingly not irreconcilable. Now, what globally could be said to be the causes of conflicts? From every evidence available, one can clearly state that due to the nature of relationships, whether in the family or elsewhere, conflict are defined seemingly incompatible. Conflict is inevitable. And therefore, we talk about the inevitability of conflict. The reason being that it will be wishful thinking to ever imagine that in any relationship, there will be no occasion for seemingly. And there have been so many ways that researchers have tried to explain how come it appears to be inevitable. The first is the human needs as a causative factor. And the reason why the human needs theorists believe that there is conflict is that there is relative deprivation, that people are forever trying to meet their needs. In fact, like the study of economics, the study of ends and meet scarce resources that have alternative uses. Here, the human needs theories are saying that because the family will never be in a position where they have fully all their needs, that there will be struggle in terms of who gets what. And therefore, that in this process of trying to meet ends, chances are that there will be friction, and that in that situation of relative deprivation, you are not likely to have a frictionless relationship, especially in the family. And so also in any human relation. A number of people will again characterize this theory as meaning that the only way to achieve peace is to ensure that you give enough. In fact, sometimes we refer to this as you can buy peace. Just provide more money, give more money. But even if you were able to achieve that, as experience has shown, you find that the needs of people will now move into other areas. Of course, you know the Maslow theory, that even if you were to satisfy a particular need, it moves to the next level. And therefore, this will continue to be present. The next theory of causative factor is what is called relational. According to this set of researchers, they say the reason why you have conflicts in any human relation is because, you see, communication, misconceptions, sometimes stereotypes, prejudice, xenophobia. Human interaction itself will produce this, in the sense that a number of people will act on the basis of prejudice. Of course, very soon we are going to touch on the research of some of our colleagues in the University of Nigeria, Nsukka, where they saw that even the issue of in-laws based on stereotypes is a big source of conflict, especially in Nigerian families. Again, there is the theory called the political theory, competition to take power. The power as the currency. In the family, it is possible that a particular person, either because of some wealth, wants to be the person in charge. And therefore, in the process of trying to acquire certain positions that probably he may not have been able to get to legitimately, that creates an unhealthy competition. And this competition itself will begin to weaken the family structure. And finally, the transformative theory that change, which is inevitable in life, will force families to take certain steps that maybe, innocuous, yet they will have the potential for creating conflict. For instance, we have seen the economic situation. We have seen families that have been forced to separate, either for reason of the economy, relocation, and within this, you're likely to, even though that might not have been the intention, but it has the potential to lead to conflict. Now, one of the things that we must bear in mind as we discuss, especially conflicts in the family, is that conflict goes through stages. Sometimes, while we get to the point that it becomes irreconcilable, maybe that we never took note from the very beginning. The best opportunity to manage conflict is usually when you are at stage 1 and stage 2. Unfortunately, those stages are sometimes ignored. And then until we get to the point of crisis, at that time, it becomes more difficult, sometimes almost impossible. Our discussion today will center on steps that must be taken so that formative escalation, those will become when you must proactively, as family members, deal with matters. Now, the first stage of conflict, you see, there is no conflict that does not have a beginning. As experienced family members, this stage, you may need to decode it, because at this stage, it may not be obvious. Sometimes, because of our communication pattern in this part of the world, people may communicate that there is a problem, but you need to decode. We said that in some communities, communication is indirect. This is the time when people speak in parables. Sometimes they use proverbs. This is the time when elders must decode that there is an issue. An American MD once told me that it took him some time to understand how Nigerians communicate. That there is hardly anything that will happen that they will not have communicated to you, but that probably you failed to decode it properly. So do not expect that during the formative stage, you are likely to get what we call direct communication. It normally comes in various ways, but at the end, you need to decode. However, where out of arrogance, sometimes ignorance, one fails to take the appropriate step at this first stage, the matter moves quickly to the second stage. And that is the stage of what? Escalation. You see, at this stage, you will begin to notice open statements, sometimes very inflammatory, and you may be wondering, how did it happen? When did we get to this? But you're already at the second stage. People take positions. Again, there is still a great opportunity to quickly deal with the matter. But unfortunately, if usually out of arrogance, we ignore this stage, the matter will get to a crisis. Family cessation of communication. And this is the time when violence in any form may become the outcome. However, like everything in life, that is where the family issues, like everything in life, there will be a de-escalation. And at the end, no matter how many years it takes, it is a family. A reconciliation will occur. It may be a different generation. Now, the beauty of what we're going to talk about today is that, you see, conflict need not go through these stages. You do not need to allow conflict to go through this sequence. The beauty of the suggestion we are going to make is that from stage 1, you can cut off stage 2, cut off stage 3, cut off stage 4, and quickly get to reconciliation. And that is the benefit of negotiation. No other institution in the world, in fact, the world has not invented any other institution that enables you to cut off stage 2, stage 3, and stage 4. No other, none whatsoever. However, it is not easy. Otherwise, we will not have been having conflicts. In fact, the whole purpose of the United Nations is to ensure that this is done at every time. And then if you read the Matrimonial Causes Act, which is the Marriage Act, all it does is to ensure that even when there is a problem, that we are able to de-escalate and again get a reconciliation. Notwithstanding that the court has power to say, we dissolve this marriage, but the court will always grant what is called the decree nisi. That is, go back and let us see how you can handle this matter and come back in 6 months if you are not able to. Now, I don't want us to end by thinking that conflict does not have positives. Far from it. Whereas we have mentioned that conflict is inevitable, based on the theories of conflict, that irrespective of what happens, you are going to have some level of conflict. However, conflict is not that bad or true. There are positives. For instance, stimulates creativity, motivates change, promotes what? Group vitality, and then it enables individual or a group to establish identity. And all this positive will be lost in a situation where you don't have those seemingly incompatible and for you to deal with it. However, there are negatives. It diverts energy, threatens well-being, more than anything for a family, breaks down group cohesion. Therefore, in managing conflict, what we are doing in essence is that whereas we will promote the positive, at the same time, we want to ensure that we minimize the negatives. And that is the concept of conflict management. That we will accept the positives because those might not be very obvious where you don't have conflict. But we will not allow the conflict to break down the group and then to waste our time and our resources. That is the whole essence of conflict management. Now, Uche, Uche, Aye, and a number of other researchers at the University of Nigeria, Nsukka, they have done a lot of studies in this area of family conflict. When I went through the studies, I picked out quite a number of areas, especially what they call the main sources from their research. The main sources of conflict or family conflict in our society. And I just took a few. There are so many others. The issue of male dominance, addictive behaviors that the other parties or partners are not comfortable with. Extramarital affairs occupying a very significant part of the research. Financial difficulties as a big source, poor communication, infertility, opposing parenting style, surprisingly, was a major source from their research. Child-related challenges in terms of, gender issues for children and so on, especially in Igbo land. Activities of in-laws, this again occupied considerable aspects of their research findings. As we move closer to the topic, let us look at what we call great moments in history. And these moments were defined in business, politics, family, and other life-related issues. Now, these great moments were those moments when stakes are really very high and justifiably so. A party in a relationship, whether business, whether politics, whether family, or general life issues, one party feels justifiably enraged. I cannot take this. I mean, this is an insult. Demonization is rampant. This guy is a devil. This my business partner. This our uncle, who happens to be the head of the family now, is a demon. There is desire for revenge, desire for vindication and justice. This matter must be settled by a court. Nothing less will satisfy me. In fact, for those kind of people who feel justifiably maltreated or ill-treated, they have a strong aversion to any form of negotiation because they believe you're just rewarding the enemy. I mean, somebody has behaved so badly, grabbing all the land, and they want us to go and talk to him. Never. And therefore, sometimes, as Kwame Nkrumah said, you have to deal with principle and pragmatism. Because Kwame Nkrumah in the book Conscientism, he said clearly that any compromise in the area of principle is abandonment, and therefore no way, let the heavens fall. We are going to fight this matter, and all these are justifiable, ladies and gentlemen. Now, a man called Professor Robert Nookins, he happens to be the director of the program on negotiation of the MIT Harvard, the MIT Harvard program on negotiation. For years, especially beginning from 1998, they have been researching on the benefits of negotiation in dealing with conflicts on various issues. In fact, two important books came from their effort. One is, many of you may be aware of the book, Getting to Yes. Again, Professor Fry anchored that. And then the second book is Bargaining with the Devil by Nookins. Now, in his book, this latest book on Bargaining with the Devil, the devil here is not being used in the sense in which it occurred in the Bible, but in the sense of evil as perceived by a party. Now, he said that we must recognize that they are devils in every relationship. Again, not in the biblical sense. Now, the first set of devils we call the global devils. And those were the devils that precipitated the Second World War. Again, you know the characters at that time, Hitler, of course, Winston Churchill. Their inability to manage their relationship, that was what resulted in the Second World War. Nothing more than that. And then it was because of their personality types. And we shall see that very shortly. Otherwise, there wouldn't have been the Second World War. I can see a raised hand. Is there something that we need to do?
No, we're good.
All right, thank you. Now, again, the apartheid devil in South Africa. What brought apartheid to a close was not because of the pressure. But again, Mandela, if you read his book, chapter 12 of Long Walk to Freedom, he explained that one day he decided that, look, this was the time to negotiate, and the negotiation took 5 years. No other thing brought apartheid to a close. The Cuban Missile Crisis of 1962, that could have been the beginning of the Third World War, which would have been a nuclear war. How John F. Kennedy was able to negotiate part of what could have been a third world war. Again, business devils. Robert Nukis explained what was called the great war between IBM and Fujitsu. Again, how they were able to negotiate their way. Otherwise, again, what could have happened would have been the collapse of the two telecom giants at that time. However, the one we're more interested in is that Robert Nukis took time to talk about the family devils. The devils that become clogs in the wheel of relationships in the family as we define divorce and those potentials in that area, and more importantly, sibling warfares. That is the warfare that occur between people who are related. You remember our definition, and therefore that these are the realities that we face. And then in the examples he gave, he showed the pros and cons of the various approaches, and that on the balance, a particular approach appears to be the most effective. And even in the business devil, in the global devil areas, one approach consistently appears to be superior than any other approach. And that is where we are going. Now, when one encounters these devils, remember the sense in which we are using devils. How does one make this decision? Should I fight? Or should I do something else? Again, by fight, we're referring to any other approach that enables us to, get back without necessarily going into any form of engagement. So to make those decisions, whether to fight or whether to negotiate, the key factors to consider. Again, let us follow looking. He said, when it comes to making decisions that involve a perceived devil, it's a matter of perception. There is a difference between individuals acting solely or on their own behalf and those acting in a representative capacity, deciding on behalf of others. Remember that in the family, you are not alone. And therefore, looking here, pay attention to the fact that the decision you're about to make in terms of committing to a battle, committing to a fight, or even going forward to negotiate, that it is going to be generational. You are not at liberty to act as if you are a sole proprietor. It's a generational issue. Therefore, the key things you need to bear in mind, number one, what are my interests? What are my opponent's interests? The uncle, whoever it is. What other alternatives do we have? But that is what are my opponent's alternatives? Again, according to looking, you may be clear in your mind, very clear, what your alternatives are. You could also estimate, matter of judgment, what the opponent or that uncle or even that in-law, what they are likely to do. But he said this is where the danger is. You are never going to be able to know for sure what their alternative or the extent to which they might go. Remember, it's a multi-generational issue. Again, potential negotiated outcome. Is there a deal that can satisfy our interest? These are things you must consider. But the greatest is that you must make a decision between principle and pragmatism. When, in all the cases he mentioned, people took decisions, what was uppermost in their mind was that whereas we can stick to principle, and that is something that not negotiable, but we must also bear in mind that pragmatism would dictate that, as Nukis put it, that there are times where, since you are not alone, and that was what Mandela did, that look, had been here 23 years, changes were not occurring. Rather, people were dying. He didn't see the outcome. He didn't see how this was going to end. Do I still continue to commit the future generation to this line of action? Or is there something else that I can do that may enable us to quickly achieve this while preserving the sanctity of our interests? On that basis, he said, I think that a negotiated approach may serve our interest better. As we begin to wind down, ladies and gentlemen, Shapiro and Jakowski, what has been called the International Institute of Negotiation, they have now given us what today we call a better alternative. And that is what is applied worldwide. Whenever you are facing hello, can you still hear me?
Yes.
All right, thank you very much. A better alternative. Whenever you're facing a situation where you need to make a decision in the family, and that is what today is called a better alternative. There are 4 things that must guide your actions. Number 1, emotion. Number 2, all the devils do not manifest in the same way. What it means that you must identify the type you're dealing with. 3, you must learn to control. You see, because he who angers you conquers you. And finally, there are options. I can see a hand up. I will soon round up, and therefore we can take questions. Will that be okay?
Yes.
I can see it. Yeah, all right. So we just explore this 4 because those are the practical ways you can deal with no matter the type of devil that one is facing, either in the family situation, more in the family, or elsewhere. Number 1, for every family member, you must recognize that you cannot act purely out of emotion. That is the starting point. Never easy. I know some people are not born calm, but this is something that you must learn. You see, no matter the provocation, because it is a generational issue, you are committing a generation to a particular course of action, which is not advisable. But even then, one must ensure that no decision is made in a condition of high emotion or in a high emotional gear state. Composure. He who angers you conquers you. Avoid impulse. Lower, these are all techniques. And therefore, any opportunity you have to train in the area of emotion, again, not just emotional intelligence. Sometimes we talk about emotional agility, how to deploy your emotion as appropriate. This is a significant success factor in dealing with those family matters. On no account must one, out of pure emotion, take a decision or commit to a particular line of action. Remember, it's not easy, but this is an area where one must continue to grow. The second, and this is again not very easy, for any type of devilish person one meets, more so in the family situation, one must try to situate such a person within the 3 possible in the world. Luckily for us, God has not created more than these 3 types There are those who are situationally difficult. Sometimes we say they present their devilishness only in situational circumstances. There are those, these are professionals, they are strategically difficult, and there are those who are naturally. Sometimes when you hear there is a failure, we couldn't reach an agreement, we couldn't talk to this person, you see, that failure arises because we're using a wrong strategy. There are different strategies for dealing with this kind of devilish people. And one of them must work. It has never failed. You know, sometimes you may not be able to count, this man may be moving, but usually it is a matter of preponderance. Somebody is more of this than that. For instance, how do you know those who are situationally? Where I come from, I know those that are situationally. They present their, devilishness only in situational circumstances. They overreact, they have short fuse. These are people who are tactless. So when one has an issue with those kind of people, there is a particular method to deal with it. And I've given you examples of some of such people. McEnroe, Winston Churchill, OBJ. And then when you get the presentation, you're going to see situations whereas some people believe that, this man is a devilish person. Yet you find somebody that gets along with them easily. And you think it is something extraordinary. It's just that the individual has mastered this person and he gets on. There are those who are strategically, for these people, being difficult is a strategy. Ordinarily, they are not. I mean, where I come from, there's a proverb that you can only wake up a man who is truly asleep. A man who is pretending to be sleeping, you are not going to succeed in waking him up. These are the people who will be very what? Tactical. Because they want to make you uncomfortable in the family. And the idea is that when they make you uncomfortable, probably you leave. Maybe your in-law. And therefore, you must understand that that is their strategy. So your own approach must be different. Yeah, because they want to cause that fight so that you become uncomfortable. You must recognize that. And then they're giving you global examples. Nixon. When you deal with unions, I deal with unions a lot, and therefore I know that ordinarily they are good people. But because there is something they want to achieve, and as soon as you recognize that, you deploy a counter. And then finally, there are those who are naturally, some persons will tell you that this man, the God just created him a devil. Just don't worry yourself. For naturally difficult people, it's a personality disorder. Pure personality disorder. Idi Amin, sometimes we call them genocidal because they may even harm themselves. And you can see the kind of names that appear here. Hitler. You see, going into a fight with this type of person is suicide. Because the individual can go to any length. Look at what happened during the Second World War. More than 60 million people. Just because, and the Prime Minister of Italy at that time warned Winston Churchill. This man, there is a personality issue. For this type of people, rationality, all those trying to be logical will not make sense to him. You can't win this kind of people based on logic. Idi Amin. How? And therefore, you go into a discussion with that person, you say it's being unreasonable. Of course. Now, how do you deal with all these kind of people? Again, I'll just summarize. You'll get these details. You know, it is your judgment call, ladies and gentlemen, either as a mother, either as a father, an uncle, whoever you're dealing with. It's your judgment call that this person who is devilish, what kind of devil is this? For those you consider to be situationally or predominantly or preponderantly, you see, all you need to do is to de-escalate that situation that enables them to display devilishness. You de-escalate. All those who know OBJ and they got on with him, all they did was to de-escalate. Reverend Father Kuka gave some examples. We don't have all those time. How he found it easy and they became friends. Just de-escalate. That is all. And remember, you cannot act out of emotion yourself. Neither will you, again, in a matter that this is the approach, you're using a different approach. You won't achieve the result. For strategically difficult people, you see, you must work within their own strategy. You know, you dictate, oh, what this guy wants to do is for me to leave this family house. You deploy a counter. You see, where you need mediation, third-party involvement, and that was what Jeff Kennedy did. And then when you go through the lookings report, you see families where, you know, in those naturally difficult situations, the party that became successful went through third-party involvement. And the thesis here, ladies and gentlemen, is, you see, no matter how mad a person appears to be, somebody, they hear words. There must be somebody that such a person will be accountable to. Your job is to find out that person. I mean, that's the story I always tell them in LBS. There was a woman in a bank that collected money, loan, First Bank, and refused to pay to the extent that a very senior manager was placed on suspension. And anybody that, you know, after she was placed, anybody should say, ah, that woman is a mad person. What? How did you get? Ah, no. Look. They may even kill you. Until she found somebody called Olumebo. Olumebo didn't even need to go to talk to her. Olumebo went straight to the Ya Oloja, the head of the market, and said, look, there will be consequences if I come. That woman will know the hear word, went to the bank, this time not to resume paying, pay the full amount. You see, no matter how mad, it may be the pastor, but there is somebody. That was again the same thing Jeff Kennedy did. When Fidel Castro became difficult, I will not remove the nuclear warheads pointing toward Florida. De Gaulle of France embarked on structural diplomacy, and those missiles came down. Options, when you have been able to know who and then to apply the counters that we mentioned. What are the options? Number one, this will never fail you in any conflict situation. And I will just summarize. Please, never you escalate matters. Don't escalate. Ultimatums, you know, don't give ultimatums. Let it appear as if you're weak. Don't escalate. But the one that I am always recommending, you see, nothing succeeds in the world where there is a conflict. Nothing succeeds more than your ability to disarm the other party in a conflict situation. Disarm the other, you see, the battle is won. If you read that book, small book, written by that Chinese about what? War. That the best way to win a war is without shooting, without firing. That is the best strategy. Disarm your opponent. And disarm does not mean you go to him and say, hey, bring that cutlass you wanted to use. No. There are methods to disarm. Again, the most effective, my brothers and sisters, again, never easy. You must swallow your pride. The best one is what Coca-Cola many years ago called you yield. And that is what is applied, especially read the Institute of Negotiation. The best approach, yield, not surrender. You've seen the picture. You must, give space. Otherwise, there is a puncture. Moving back a few inches allow us to remain whole so that you may perform next maneuver. There is, if you read all the Gospels, there is one particular portion that always made me happy, where a woman, her name was never given, described as a Samaritan, probably, came and was requesting for healing for the daughter. And she apparently was disturbing. And the disciples of Christ told Christ that, can we give this woman what she's looking for so that she can leave us alone? And Christ made a statement to the fact that, how do you expect me to give what belongs to children to dogs? But look at what that woman did. Classical. And that is in line with this approach. Disarm your opponent. What she did, she yielded. Because that is not the time to quarrel. No. Her objective was to achieve healing. And therefore, she took that approach. The approach was to yield. I totally agree. No, they don't deserve, dogs don't deserve. However, they do what? They get the crumbs. As soon as he said that, some gospel said that Christ said that, I have never seen anything like this, even in Israel. Go, take it and go like that. This is very effective, not easy, but anytime you succeed in disarming your opponent through this method, you have won. As we close, I want to leave you with some African proverbs. Remember, in the family, you have everything to lose. And that's why Sudan, they say, where there is nothing to lose, then there is nothing to fear. That is not the case here. But Malawians have a proverb. A family is not a club that you can easily relinquish membership of. You are there. You are there. And therefore, there is no fight to a finish. You are going to remain a member, generations yet unborn. And therefore, one must be very mindful of whatever step you are taking, because you are not a standalone. Conclusion. All the lessons of history point in this direction. No matter how impossible it looks, no matter how difficult it appears, no matter how devilish an individual looks like, as a man called Calvin Kennedy, this was the title of his book. He wrote a Harvard Business Review, and then we turned it into a book. And the title is Everything is Negotiable. And when you hear that negotiation broke down, we must completely recognize that it is due to incompetence of those who handled it, inability to know the type of person or the devil you're dealing with, or even haven't recognized that, using an approach that was not appropriate in the circumstance. So, ladies and gentlemen, I thank you so much for your attention. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you. We already have questions popping in. Goodness. That's good. Okay, so we start with the first one. And he asked, what advice do you have for those who finally de-escalate conflicts and forgive, but find it tough freely as before the conflict.
Sorry, I didn't hear you properly. Your line didn't,
Oh, really?
I wasn't hearing.
Okay. I said there are already a lot of questions here, and one of them is, what advice do you have for those who finally de-escalate conflict and forgive, but find it tough or impossible to relate with the same people as freely as before the conflict? Did you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, do you want us to take all the questions, then I can just talk straight?
Okay, it depends on how you want to go first. If that works, that's also okay.
Yes.
Okay, so we have another question here. Okay, there's a question. Oh my gosh, okay. So do we have other questions? Hello?
Yes, I can.
Okay, so people are thanking you for this very practical, as I see a lot of, yeah. Oh, there is a recording of the presentation. So yes, so we thank you for these lovely practical steps. But if we had questions, can we have them now?
All right. There's a question I saw here on Trump and Putin. I was expecting that question. That is, where do we categorize them? You know, I talked about all those devils and so on. Where do, this question is always coming, and I knew to come. The first thing I would say is that it is still a bit early to begin to categorize them. The reason is that we're still seeing what they are doing play out. And therefore, any answer we give now will be a bit tentative, given that history is still unfolding concerning all these. Yeah, but if we still want to be guided in terms of what kind of persons do we think they are for now, my first reaction, especially as regards Putin, is that whereas it may look as if Putin belongs to the last category, those we call naturally, personality, people like Hitler, genocidal, but it looks to me that Putin is very strategic. That appears to me to be his correct categorization, even though history may still place him to be within those genocidal. But I don't think you could classify Putin in the same group with a man like Idi Amin, a man like Hitler. Yeah, Putin is very, he calculates. And therefore you see that he moves strategically. That is my reading of Putin. For a man like Trump, I think Trump hovers between number 1 and number 2 for now. Trump, to me, is not a very strong strategist. I don't know his strategy. He appears to react whatever the situation is. I mean, a man whose foreign policy was being made known by Twitter. I don't think he's such a serious man. a man that would say something to his secretary and then go ahead and take a different position based on circumstance that he found himself. He goes to any public place. So he hovered between 1 and 2. That would be my reading of a man like Trump for now, until, again, history will have more evidence to be able to confirm where he belongs. But I don't think any of them qualifies to be side by side with a man like Hitler, I mean, for now, or even Idi Amin. All right. Now, the question I have here is somebody de-escalates and forgives, but finds it difficult to relate as before the conflict. I would like to approach this by looking at where I called, or where we have described as stages of conflict. Because you see, conflict, they do not just happen. If you look at the stages, there is the formative period, there is the escalation, there is the third stage. Unfortunately, the third stage, which we call the crisis stage, this is the stage that many people recognize as conflict. Yeah, that is the stage where we have actually missed 2 opportunities. You know, for us as parents, and for us as adults and family members, our major task will always be, since we know that conflict is inevitable, and we have seen the causative factors, there are many. Our job will be, even in the same nuclear family setup, our job will be to look out for those first signs. And those 5 signs are those ones that come at the formative period. You know, if you are able to cut off the other stages and you bring it not just to the escalation, but to transformation, you find that no bad blood would have occurred. Because you see, the bad blood actually developed during the crisis stage. But you see, when you have allowed conflict to get to conflict, where one communication may have ceased, there would have been possible loss of human lives and so on in a family gathering, A, kill B, you know, all those kind of things. That is when the issue you raise will now become very serious. And that is when you are now required to go through a very lengthy process to be able to, even if you reconcile, to bring the family back. Therefore, in family situation, my plea to everybody, never easy, but please look for those first signs. Don't sweep anything under the carpet. Whatever it is, deal with it. Where I come from, we know quite a number of families where what they have become today in terms of taking opposite sides concerning, let us even say, family property. And people will tell you that, you see, this problem was caused by their father when he was alive, just because he failed to do certain things. And when you look back, you find that, yes, and that those things have now reached the level of crisis. Now is the time where you now require third party, and it may be difficult because it becomes generational. But it cannot be like that forever, certainly. A generation will get up and they will ask themselves, what has this been? What has this cost us? Unfortunately, at that time, quite a number of things would have happened. I will just give you an example because that was a very great question that came. You know, there was a day I was driving in Lagos here around an area called Census. And then there was a police checkpoint, as usual. And then because I live in Surulere, so I know these places very well. And then the police people stopped me, as usual, and we greeted. Yeah, but there was a couple or so who was a bit nasty. He said, no, park. So I cleared. Of course, he now started searching the vehicle, go to the booth, very unusual. We'll check under the seat. And of course, I followed him because I know that if you're not paying attention, anything can happen. He was asking questions. And at the time, I became a bit irritated. So I now demanded from him, what is it? And of course, he got angry. And we were talking at each other. The inspector who was sitting by the corner, got up and came and said, okay, what happened? So I now told him this. So he excused the couple. So and then he asked me, okay, I have not seen you like this. I said, well, this guy was being, he said, look, that I did not handle this matter well. He told me. So I told him, why? He said, look, I could have, again, not that he was demanding money, but that there was no point, that this guy obviously was trying to provoke you, and you fell for it. However, he now made a comment. The comment was, he asked me a question, that, okay, if you see Nitel, if you see this big building, they burn, what thing caused the fire? So I said, how would I know? He said, no, theoretically, what thing they cause fire? I said, well, maybe one switch. He said, very good. He said, look, Oga, you see, whatever you can settle at that early stage, that switch, yeah, because if you escalate this matter, second stage, and it goes to crisis, at that time, it leaves our hand, even him as inspector, cannot do much. That I should not have allowed it to go beyond the level of that couple. And that would be my answer, that, you see, once you have allowed matter go beyond formative, where you won't decode it and you deal with it. To allow it to go to that level of escalation is already a failure of leadership. It's a failure of your role as an adult. And that's why sometimes they, does it mean they don't have elders in that family? When they have allowed the matter to get to this crisis, it means that they don't have elders. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you very much for that. I'll just read out all the questions and then maybe we'll wrap up from there. So someone asks, what do you do when reason doesn't apply when de-escalating conflicts, such that those whom you are trying to help are in cliques, they support themselves? Then someone asks, is everything really negotiable? Another asks, I agree to some extent that everything is negotiable. However, it appears that the outcome of negotiations most times are not sustainable. What is your take on that, sir? And then we have the final question that we will all close on. What can you say about the richest woman in Africa who recently separated from her husband of 40 years from a marriage that looked rock solid? So yes, those are the questions. And then if you throw light to them, we would wrap up from there. It's
right,
I think from the, yeah.
All right, Sandra, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Yeah. Now, the question as to at a time reason does not apply. There is the person who asked the question can further reach out to me. The reason is that in negotiation, there are things we call, you have to deal with what we call cognitive biases. And the research has shown that they are like, let us even say like 25. You are not even aware of those biases yourself. And therefore, when we now begin to talk about reasonable, being reasonable, we encounter this a lot in union management negotiation. As a management staff, I am not fully aware of certain biases I have. And therefore, in my evaluation of what the union people are saying, I will always ascribe not being reasonable to them. And they also believe, again, based on certain biases they have, based on their orientation, based on their ideology. And therefore, when you are talking about being reasonable, it is also very ideological. There may not be any clear objective measures of it. Therefore, we need to be careful about that. Secondly, on the issue of, reasonable, let us even assume that it's an objective measure for it. You see, when I talked about these three categories of devilish behaviors in every relationship, whether business, life, or whatever it is, we talked about those who say they are situationally, there are those who are strategically, there are those who are naturally. You find that the issue of being reasonable can only work when you're dealing with, it's a matter of your judgment. You apply reasoning to especially those who are strategically. For the other set of people, no, what appeals to them is different. I mean, let us take like a situationally difficult person, and that is the kind of devil he is. Something as simple as like Father Kuka explained, dealing with OBJ. And it happens to quite a number of people. He gave Kuka during one of the lectures, gave the example. You come, there is a proposal, there are things you want to discuss with him. It turns out to be the morning when a newspaper headline has hit him hard, where that morning a minister has misbehaved. These kind of people, they are not able to put things in compartments. They are not going to separate matters. Whoever goes to meet him that day, you will receive it. So whatever you present, there's no question of being reasonable. It will not work. We have seen those. I mean, there's one big organization here near me at Gomu. One day we were discussing this. They mentioned one of their directors. I mean, to the extent that any day he comes to work wearing that shade to work, that is the day he will never be reasonable. No matter what you go to discuss with him, the answer is negative. And everybody knew in the organization. And they will call the PA, Oga wear shade, say Oga wear shade. You just suspend anything you're doing. I'm just using this simple case. But for you to recognize that for those kind of people, for you to make headway, it is not just by logical presentation of facts. You must also look at all the surrounding circumstances so that you are able to, because you want to maximize an outcome in your own favor. Now, on the issue of is everything negotiable, honestly, I stand here on all the authority of everybody I have met. I confirm clearly that everything in life, in fact, Newsweek magazine famously defined negotiation as a game of life. And that you play to win. So if you want to get a good outcome, you must learn the science and the art of negotiation, because those are the things that will make you win. Yeah, when one fails to win, it's not because the game is not on, but it means that one did not prepare well, either in terms of strategy or tactics. But there is nothing that is not negotiable, because after all, what is negotiation? Negotiation is nothing other than what? Communication for the purpose of achieving an agreement. You want to secure an agreement. So I say that negotiation is a game of life, nothing outside life that you can do without negotiation. There's nothing. So I completely, again, confirm that statement. And that is the title of the book. Again, you can Google it. Everything is negotiable. Written by a man called Calvin Kennedy, C-A-V-I-N, then Kennedy as in normal Kennedy. He's a Harvard writer. Yeah, not a very big book, one read book. If you Google, you find it. Everything is negotiable. Now, our colleague asked that outcome of negotiation that they don't appear to be what? Sustainable. Quite the contrary. That in fact, it is the other outcomes that you achieve through force, through litigation, maybe you get a court judgment that may not be sustainable. In fact, a negotiated settlement is the one that you can sleep with your two eyes closed. Yeah, because a court, I know many cases, even in Lagos, I mean, a court once took a decision that the whole of Ijesha today should pack out and that the land belongs to Itire. Ijesha Tedo that is even bigger than Itire. And how do you get a whole area? Supreme Court decision. And the Ijesha Tedo people say, all right, Supreme Court should come and evacuate and let us see how that will happen. See today. And the people have gone back. Okay, can we negotiate so that you can at least pay us some money? They say, hey, now you're talking. And therefore, I think that the outcome of a negotiation appears to be the one that is more sustainable. The reason being that you have been able to secure the agreement of the other party, again, through appropriate strategy and tactics. And the final question that I have here is the richest woman, and that after 40 years, you know, they were able to, or they decided that it was time to call it quits. I don't have the full facts of the case, and therefore any comment I make in this regard may be a bit unfair in the sense that it may be out of bias. Yeah, but the first question is that, I mean, something one has been able to endure, let us even assume that is an endurance, and one managed it for 40 years. So now, what will remain now for this matter? 40 years. And the person suddenly woke up that, this, I cannot. I mean, unless there are other reasons that we don't know. Yeah, but if I were a judge and this matter comes, and the individual presents his or her pleading, that after 40 years, and I say, look, you mean you were in this thing for 40 years, and you suddenly, then, I mean, you have done very well. 40 years. That is a long time in history. So that there could be some other reasons, we don't know. Probably a particular behavior on the part of one person or the other. Or it could be purely financial or economic decision by one party. Yeah, but notwithstanding this, I do not think that that would have been what somebody should do. The reason being that 40 years, one should be able to take a different view of this matter than to end it all. I don't know why any court will do that. Certainly, I don't think any court in Nigeria would have taken that decision. I would doubt it. All right, thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you very much, sir. It's been eye-opening. I think even from the topic, I didn't know it was even okay to fight. So I think we have known where to stand, negotiate, and at least technically look at our partners. I hope we don't call them devils, but where they fall into relationships we have in the family as a whole. So thank you very much. I have the books written down. I think we will send them to the chat group, some of those books. It would be nice to start becoming an expert in de-escalating situations so that we don't get to that point where we struggle, because I think it's really true. You forgive him, but you really can't have that same relationship anymore. So thank you very much for this eye-opening lecture. We appreciate you.
We can still forgive and still have the same